This weekend, NASCAR is returning to the hallowed grounds of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. This year, instead of racing the Brickyard 400 on the oval, though, they're going to be racing on the Indianapolis road course. So, leading into the weekend, there has been debate on what should be the proper layout. Should it be back to the Indianapolis oval, or should we just roll through long-term with the road course? So today I want to look at this because for a long time, many fans didn't want to race at Indy at all. Or many fans didn't think that NASCAR really fit there and that the racing was horrible. But this past year with the change, there has been a large contingent of fans who have really pushed back against that narrative. So today we're going to look at both sides of this. Those who want to go back to the 400 and those who want to roll with the road course. So let's get into it. Starting with those who want to go back to the 400. The first major point that people always bring up is tradition. Many people bring up the point that this race has been on the oval since 1994. And in that time, it's had a ton of tradition set forth with it. After all, this is the race that started the tradition of kissing the bricks. So changing this so abruptly and so fast may be a lot for fans to take in. Plus, if you look at it, this race really had the same date rolling for a good 23 or so years. From 94 to 2017, it was basically in the middle of summer, either at the start of August or end of July. So it definitely is a tradition that many fans have grown up with, and there's a large amount of fans who have had this tradition the entirety of their lives watching NASCAR. So it's a huge change once again for a sport that claimed it was trying to stay with its roots. Now, another big point is that the oval is the same course as the Indy 500. That's a big deal. That means that NASCAR is one of, if not the only series that runs the same layout at Indianapolis that the biggest race in America is run on. This really makes it a who's who of winning at the oval. If you look back at those who have won the Brickyard 400, other than a few people out of the blue, there really have been just great drivers winning. When you think of drivers who win at the Brickyard, you think of guys like Gordon, Johnson, Stewart, Harvick, Earnhardt, Jarrett. You think of great drivers. And when you think of drivers who pull off the upset, a lot of them are either pretty good drivers who just aren't all-time greats like Jamie McMurray, or are drivers who have racing in their blood, guys like Paul Menard. Now, there's a big reason why there aren't too many random drivers that pop up out of the blue and win the Brickyard 400, and it's because it's a challenge for drivers. When I say it's a who's who of won at Indy, it really is, because when you look at drivers who have won the Brickyard 400, there is a lot of times a correlation between the winner of that race and the winner of the championship that year. And if they didn't win the championship, a lot of times they were contending for it. Many argue when you look at road courses, it's going to be the same guys winning. And this year has proved in a lot of ways that that can be true. I mean, you look at the guys who have really been up front at the road courses this year, and it's the same people every time. Chase Elliott, Kyle Larson, Christopher Bell, Kyle Busch, and then you can throw in a few others that rotate in there. But it usually is the same cast of characters at road courses. That style of racing just suits some drivers better. Whereas the argument is at Indy, the style of driving that stock cars especially have to have basically equals perfection. You have to run a perfect race to win straight up off of speed at Indianapolis. And that's something that's been proven at road courses in the last couple of years just to not be true. I mean, look at Chase Elliott's crash and win at the Roval, for instance. Now, another big point that I see not too many bringing up, but might be a good point to bring up, especially if the ratings are down this weekend, is that the Indy Oval is a ratings draw. When you look at the Brickyard 400, even in years when NASCAR is down, this usually is one of the most watched races. If I'm not mistaken, it's a Brickyard 400, which is the most watched sports event on NBC Sports Network. So this could be a losing move for NASCAR long term. Yes, the Brickyard 400 has had a lot of problems in the past decade and a half. I have talked about that several times in videos and live streams, but even throughout all of that, through the attendance woes, through the racing woes, the ratings have still stayed high for the most part. So it's a proven TV commodity. And the biggest point that a lot of people are bringing up that really wasn't brought up before is that the racing really wasn't as bad as people remember, according to those who are for the oval. A lot of people bring up, and a lot of times rightly so, that it wasn't the track's fault as much as it was the car's fault. When you look at the problems the Brickyard 400 really started to have, they do correlate a lot with economics of the times, but they also correlate with the fact that the COT in Gen 6 were hyper-aero dependent, even compared to the aero-dependent Gen 4 cars. So when you look at all the years from 94 to 07, it does seem like this race had a lot more prestige and a lot better racing. Is it as good as people remember? I'll leave that up to you to decide. Now, while there are those who are for the oval, there are also those for the roval, or the road course. And the first big point that a lot of people for the road course bring up is the fact that the oval, in a lot of people's opinions, had some pretty bad racing. Now, I want you to do something. Look back at basically any Brickyard 400 in the past 10 years, even the past 20 or 27 or however long it's been. And what you'll see a lot of the time is a lot of single file snake line racing. Now, I will say that strategy is a big part to play in a lot of these races, and the racing side by side in and of itself is not the main draw, but still I can see where a lot of people are coming from with this. The racing was pretty dull more often than not, and even NASCAR knew they had to change stuff up. It's not a coincidence that in 2015, when they were testing aero packages, Indianapolis was the first place they tested it at. Now, a lot of people who are for the road course also say that those who are looking back and wanting the Brickyard 400 are looking back with rose-colored glasses, nostalgia goggles to the max about the oval. Listen, if you looked back anywhere online, anywhere other than at the track at Indianapolis at what NASCAR fans really thought, they would tell you it was some pretty bad racing. The approval rating, more than likely, for Indianapolis's racing was probably not over 50% at the time. But since something has been changed, NASCAR fans naturally are nostalgic, especially according to what a lot of people for the road course are saying. That these are people who are just not ready for change. Now, like I said, you can look back yourself and see the snake lines going down the straightaway of cars. And you can see that other than a few select races over its history, especially recent history, the Brickyard 400 has not been anywhere close to being the race of the year. Now, to contrast this, especially with last year's Brickyard 400, a lot of people brought up the great finish from the Xfinity race last year. For some reason, the way the cars in both Cup and Xfinity have been made just makes them race better at road courses than a lot of other generations of cars that NASCAR's had over the last couple decades. These cars can take a lot of hitting, beating, and banging and still go on and win a race. You can see the aggression that drivers put out, and you can see a lot of hard-nosed racing that a lot of fans claim they really want to see back. Now, it's not in the same way as a short track, but it is probably the next best thing when it comes to that kind of racing. And there is a good shot that we might see a really good race this year. I mean, if you look at the road course races this past year, a lot of them have been seen as pretty good races. Now, another argument that's used too is that something had to change to get fans invested again. Like I said, it's been no mistake that the Indianapolis Motor Speedway's attendance for NASCAR races has been pretty abysmal. Yeah, even if it is 40,000, that looks pretty terrible in a place that can hold 250,000 or more. And while the TV ratings for Indianapolis are up compared to other races, they're still going down. It's not like people are getting drawn in from outside of the racing circles to watch this race. I mean, if you look, the date kept moving nonstop the last couple years. First to be the cutoff race for the chase, then it got moved up into the 4th of July weekend, and now it's back in the summer weekend again. It didn't have a set date like other crown jewels that people put this race up with, like the Daytona 500, the Coke 600, or the Southern 500. Even with the Southern 500 getting moved a lot, it still was on a big weekend. Most years it was away from its traditional Labor Day spot. I mean, for a lot of fans, it was a tradition the night before Mother's Day to watch the Southern 500. So it still had that traditional feel to it. Whereas this race, it feels like it could be plugged in anywhere. This race really hasn't had a set date now for 5 years, after having one for so long. And then the last big one that people bring up, and it's something that I think a lot of overall motorsports fans can find pretty cool, is that this offers an attempt at the doubleheader with IndyCar at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. I have to say that is something that's really, really cool to see the two top series of motor racing in America have a shared course for a weekend. And that's really a big selling point for a lot of motorsports fans. I mean, it's estimated right now that up to 50 to 60,000 or more fans could show up to this race. And if you look at the way attendance has been for a lot of the road course races this year, it's been pretty high. COTA had as many as they possibly could. Road America had well over 100,000 there. So who's to say that maybe one day, if this is built up right, you can't have 100,000 people again at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway for the road course doubleheader. It might be a big selling point, and for a lot of people for this change, it is the selling point to have them all in the same course in the same weekend. Now, I will say this as we end off this video. I think that you can see the clear dividing line if you just take a step back. Those that are for the 400 are definitely more traditional, more NASCAR conservative kind of fans who want to keep stuff a lot of the way it was, who want to keep much of the tradition, who want to keep much of the prestige of this event, and who want to keep basically NASCAR from not going the direction that they don't think is the right direction of going in. And then you see those for the road course. You see those who I don't really want to say don't care as much about tradition, but are willing to bend the rules of those traditions, especially if it means possibly reinvigorating an event. The people who are more for the road course, I've noticed, generally are those who are more for the position that NASCAR is going towards long term. Listen, I have my side of it. Personally, I think both are wrong and we should just go to IRP. I'm not going to say whether one is right or wrong. We haven't seen the racing this weekend. For all we know, it could be one of the greatest things NASCAR's ever done, or it could be a complete and utter disaster. We just got to wait and see what it is. So I'm not going to say that one is right or wrong. I want to leave that debate to you in the comments. So let me know down below what you think. Should we go back to the Brickyard 400? Or should we go to the Indy road course like we're doing? Or should we do my plan, scrap the whole damn thing, and go to a short track at IRP? Let me know down in the comments below. While you're at it, leave a like on this video, share this video, and subscribe to my channel for more great NASCAR content. And until next time, have a good one.